Welcome to the Joy of Connecting, where modern professionals share stories of meaningful connection and how it increases business success, unlocks career growth, and creates personal happiness. The show is powered by Matcha, software for communities, groups, and teams that thrive on connection. Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Joy of Connecting. It's Melissa, your host, and I'm here with MK Getler-Porizkova. They are the CMO at Loop Tie, which is a gifting platform that I want them to tell you a little bit more about soon. They are also the founder of Branded Inferior, which ties into this idea of bringing more connection, but more kindness into the world as well, which is something we're going to get to on the show. They're someone I've worked with in over the last month or two or three or six around connection. And we even talked about this idea of Project Connect and how do we bring connection into the working world, but also from a mental health standpoint. I think our relationship goes beyond just how do we build connection for work purposes and businesses we're building, and how do we make it a human issue at hand. So welcome to the show, MK. Thanks for being here. Started off by telling us a little bit. I love the question, what do you do for a living? But more importantly, who are you passionate about helping?
Oh, I love this question. I like that framing, right? Because we spend so much time talking about titles or the companies that we work for. We don't often talk about the impact that we're making at this job. So thank you for framing it this way. So I get to talk about the impact that we make. So at Loop Tie, the impact that we're after is to try to help turn the $306 billion spent annually on corporate gifting into engines of social impact. And we see that happen across three different areas. We see environmental impact, social impact, and economic impact as three areas where corporate gifting can be reimagined. We're a carbon regenerative company. Like carbon neutrality is not enough for organizations these days. They need to be striving for more. So we're carbon regenerative with all of our shipping and fulfillment practices. We source all of our gifts from independent creators, makers, and artisans, many of whom are just starting off with founding their businesses. So we give them access to what we consider capital for their businesses and get a piece of that $306 billion worth of corporate gifting budget out there in the world. And of course, if we are going to choose these small businesses, we should be thinking more critically about who of these small businesses we're choosing to help elevate marginalized communities and give them a platform for their brands to be discovered. And again, that access to capital to help grow and scale their businesses. So 73% of the gifts in our marketplace embody some aspect of social stewardship, whether they be women-owned businesses, queer-owned businesses, whether they're all made from sustainable materials or resources, or they have some sort of philanthropic or give back component to their business as well. Our job is to just try to help connect all that money in the market with corporate gifting to businesses that really need that additional assistance to help grow and scale.
You know, I know you as a human who likes to connect with other people from a work perspective. Like you are a connector just by nature, the way you are. But it's incredible to find yourself working in a business that connects not just a person to a product or a business idea to a market, but you are really at this point of multiple connections, as you outlined, between the creators, between the end buyers, between the recipients of the gift. There's so many connections being made there. Would you share with us a story of connection and how it maybe led to either business growth or personal growth or even, something incredible that you've seen in your experience?
What's beautiful about our company and about my job in particular is that I get to spend time actually looking at the thank you notes that folks send after they redeem a gift from Loop Tie. So our process, it's all done digitally. That way, again, we're reducing our carbon footprint. We're not having all this excess waste out into this world. And folks can send a thank you note back to the person who sent them a gift. And I have seen so many sentimental and thoughtful thank yous come through that. Things like, thank you for helping me support a small business and not giving me yet another water bottle that we just don't need in our house, right? I've also seen some really interesting ones that are very, very personal. It's like, hey, thank you. That was a really tough time in my life. And this gift means more to me than you'll ever know. So these little micro connections that are happening, and it happens all around us. That's the beauty of the world that we live in, but in many different ways and shapes and forms. But gifting is a really unique form of connection because it's taking this act of generosity, of kindness, and putting that at the forefront of a relationship to help deepen it, strengthen it, accelerate it. And when we see all of these little thank you notes coming in, we just see this story of this really beautiful connection in what I hope to be a long series of connection between folks. We work with a couple of teams in the NFL franchises, and one of the thank you notes that always gets me is this thank you note that comes in from a season ticket holder appreciation that one of the teams that we work with, the 49ers, sends out. So every year to get their season ticket holders hyped about the upcoming season, they send them out limited edition merch for the 49ers in the upcoming season that they can wear. And everybody is always clamoring over like one very specific thing every year because they always have like one really cool thing that everybody wants. But the thank you note that always stands out to me is a thank you note that conveys appreciation for being part of a community. And as I think about really what gifting helps to do, especially gifting in this form, right? Where, yes, they're not the players on the 49ers, but they feel like they're the 49ers. They're season ticket holders. They're part of a team. They're part of a community. They're out here with that connection to one another and to this cause, this mission of, taking the national championship that I find so beautiful and how they feel so safe and accepted and seen in that space. And I just love that. I love reading those ones. When the gifts all start coming through, I'm just like, this is like the feel good day of the year for Loop and Tie.
Ugh, I love it. What an amazing spot to be in to be able to see that coming through.
Yeah.
Okay. So if you're thinking it may be about gifting, it may be about something else related to, building connection, building these communities or this feeling of community. What is one piece of advice that you might give someone we structured around someone earlier in their career, but someone who's kind of coming into this world, maybe the business world specifically, what's one piece of advice related to connection that you would give that person?
I think the connection to the self is the most important thing you can develop in order to understand how to meaningfully connect with others. And your connection to yourself comes from a place of authenticity, right? This is a centering, guiding principle about why you are connecting to yourself. What is your motivating factor? What are the things that inspire you? What are the things that motivate you? And how do you turn those elements about yourself into connection points to connecting with others that are around you? And so if you're young and you're starting with your professional career, spend some time, connect with yourself, understand what your purpose is, your life's work, the accumulation of your life's work. What do you want that impact to be? And then use that as your charter for how you go about and show up in this world and connect with others. Your professional career is always a constant recirculation of connecting to yourself, connecting to your team, connecting to your customers, connecting to your community. And as you grow and learn, you just keep coming back into this cycle of reconnecting in a deeper, more meaningful sense.
I think that was so well said. And I loved how you wrapped it up too by saying, kind of implying that it is this continuous virtuous cycle where you start, like you mentioned earlier in your career, you find kind of what you stand for, but that may not be the same midway through your career, 10 years down the road, 20 years down the road. And
Definitely.
I love that idea of it, continual reevaluation. So powerful.
Yeah. And I just think so few professionals realize that until it's too late.
Yeah.
And they feel disconnected from themselves and their work feels meaningless. And they don't know why they're here and doing these things and they're going through the motions of it all.
Yeah.
And so when you start to reconnect with the self, then you start to realize what it all means. Why are we all here? Why am I here? What are we doing?
This advice is not just for early in the career. This advice is for anyone listening who now is going, oh, wait, those questions are coming up again. What are we doing here?
Exactly.
It happens. Well, if that's a powerful piece of advice for ourselves to kind of ask the questions of ourselves, what's a question that you use when you are thinking about building better connections with others? Let's say you've already found that pretty authentic self. You think you've got a good idea. When you then go to connect with someone else, do you have a good question that you like to use that really opens up excellent discussion?
My favorite question is, tell me more about that. So often we spend time listening with the intent to respond rather than listening with the intent to understand. And when folks really open up the aperture for somebody to tell you more about whatever it is, it could be really tactical, very professional style conversation, or it could be, you know, oh yeah, I really love Lego, or, I really love this. Like, tell me more about that. What do you love about it? That opens up a space where your vulnerability, right, is just kind of inherent in that space. And it also allows the person to show up in a way that feels comfortable for them as well too. So that question is just a door opener and a conversation starter so you can get to know somebody and let them know, hey, it's a space where I'm actually actively asking you to tell me more about the thing you're interested in so that I too can become interested in it.
Yeah, it's beautifully said. You take what they've said and you said, "Yep, now I want more. Give me more. Here's a little bit more floor time for you to keep chatting." I love it.
Yeah.
You know, most of the folks I talk to know the value in the one-to-one relationships. They start to really find more of those as they align with different communities. So I'm
Mm.
really curious, what's a community that comes to mind where you think they do this really well? They build stronger connections. They build authentic connections. They
Mhm.
help people take the time to spend with each other versus just jump right into the transactional. Is there a community that you kind of want to give a shout out to or tell us a little bit about?
Yeah, it's a really great question because when so often in B2B, when we think of communities, we're thinking of like knowledge transference communities or like, the marketing community sense where we're trying to bring our evangelizers and our prospects together and have a good constructive dialogue. I'm personally more interested in communities that are creating safe harbor and safe spaces for one
Mhm,
another and
mhm.
not just thinking about creating commerce, right, as the intended outcome of it. So one of the communities that I'm involved in, I'm an advisor to their business. It's called We Create Space. And they are a global organization helping LGBTQ plus leaders step into their leadership style and skills. And the space that they have assembled is really beautiful because the first thing that they offer is a chance to connect with yourself and learn more about your identity and learn more about your leadership style and understand how you show up in this world and also how you want to show up in the world, recognizing
Right.
that there's a choice. They also provide a lot of education and resources for folks to understand how to deepen and strengthen their skills with their connection to their self and their connection with their team, but also their connection to their company and the
Mm.
executive structure that is going to help build a space that feels and resembles like the space that We Create Space assembles. And I think that with that education first mindset and with that curiosity and with the openness to possibility, that space just organically creates something that is just really vulnerable and helpful and genuine. And folks really gravitate towards it.
What's interesting too, I find so many communities go right to this is who we are and what we do, right? It's the title. It's about the outcome essentially, even just in the naming of them.
Yeah.
So the idea that it's called We Create Space kind of had me at hello a little bit. I was
Yes.
like, wow, it's creating a completely different mindset when you step into a community that is even called that before you've even taken part. Wow.
Exactly. When you look at spaces where community is naturally gathering, one of my favorite spaces to observe is TikTok. And the community that
Mm.
you watch, and if you can step outside of the content that you're ingesting and just look at the mechanics of what's happening, it's the relatability that
Mm.
really gets folks to feel connected to one another in there. In communities, once they strike that relatability chord, just starts to naturally and organically find that followership and the connection within their followers as well too. And I think so often folks just forget that step.
Yeah. I've got to pull that thread a little bit. I'm going to drop the tell me more about that, but specifically on relatability. I mean, it's such a, you know it when you see it type of topic. Any little insights or little epiphanies that you've had when you think about relatability that you've seen in this
Yeah, it's
content creation or else community
a
creation?
good question because I feel like, COVID was a really interesting time frame for a lot of leaders, right? Who were faced with unprecedented time. I find that so often leaders weren't sure how to show up for their teams during a time of crisis. And they knew that some leaders showed up and pretended like just kept forging on, right? Just kept pretending, like we're just moving forward, moving forward. And some
Right.
leaders were like, that doesn't feel right for me, right? Because I just can't show up in that way. I can't turn that off in my brain. I just need to start thinking about how I create a space where how
Mhm.
I'm feeling is available and accessible to others. And if that resonates with them, if they can relate to the way that I'm feeling, we can then have a deeper connection with one another because we can
Okay.
relate on that level. And even on the positive, right? Like what I'm finding on LinkedIn, especially right now, is like some content creators are just showing like, hey, I had a really hard time with this. Here's a way I solved it, and showing some vulnerability, showing some openness to feedback, to criticism. But the collective is coming forward and saying, yeah, well, this is how I did it. Really like the way you approached this. Have you considered this? This is how we did. Oh, I wish I had known that before I did this. And so that relatability of just saying like, this is what I'm experiencing. Is anybody else experiencing the same thing? Great. Let's gather here. Let's talk about it. Let's share some ways in which we've approached this mutual feeling that we're all having. That's what I think also is really disarming for folks. Just like the tell me more question, it's really disarming when you're just like, oh, that person was real and authentic and genuine. Cool. I'm going to mirror that behavior because that's the behavior that I find really nourishing and enriching for me.
Mm. It's interesting that the relatability kind of came back full circle to self-awareness, understanding who you are, showing up as that,
Mhm.
and then also making space. When you think about people that either inspire you or have maybe kind of pushed you into action or anything else like that, who is one other person that you consider just a total pro when it comes to connecting, when it comes to the relatability, the authenticity, any aspect of this you want to tap into? Who's
Yeah.
your total pro?
My wife, actually. This is my chance to humble brag. So my wife is an incredible connector. She just does it so naturally and so organically, but it takes me a little bit to connect with folks. She shows up in every space with an abundance of joy and positivity, and she's like a magnet. Everybody just wants to talk with her because of the way that she creates that space, if you will, of positivity, of imagination, of playfulness.
Interesting.
And the way that she assembles communities of all different types, of all different like interests is so beautiful to me that I study it from afar and be like, well, how do I replicate? How do I bring more of that out into this world so that others feel really safe, really playful with me, and also feel like that they can be their authentic selves and we can share something really special together. So yeah, so she's my favorite connector.
Amazing. Well, thank you, MK. It's been a real pleasure chatting with you and appreciate you sharing some of these ideas of how we can connect better, how people can kind of up their connection game, and certainly the elements of relatability and kindness that flow through all of that. So
Well,
thanks for
thank
being here
you.
today.
Thank you for creating this space. I can't wait to learn more from your other guests as well too as this show continues to carry on.
Thanks for tuning in. If you enjoyed the episode, please leave a review to help us reach more listeners. Have a story of your own to share? Visit www.joyofconnect.ing. And do you know a community or group that wants to connect their members better? Check out what we're brewing up at www.matcha.so. Until next time, keep connecting with others like a pro. You never know where it might lead.